April 14, 1912. The Titanic sailed smoothly across the North Atlantic, cutting through the icy waters with the confidence of a floating palace. The night was still. The sea, unusually calm like a sheet of glass stretching into darkness. Above, a sky full of stars blinked down on the unsinkable ship. No one could imagine that within 1 hour, the most luxurious liner ever built would begin its descent into history and legend. Inside, the Titanic was alive with elegance and laughter. The first-class dining saloon was glowing with light and chatter as the wealthy elite enjoyed lavish desserts and sipped fine wine. Men in tuxedos and women in silk gowns danced to the soft rhythm of the orchestra. A young couple celebrated their honeymoon. An American millionaire discussed business over brandy. And below deck, third-class families shared stories of hope, dreams of a better life, waiting across the ocean. At 11:30 p.m., Steward Frederick Dentray was helping an elderly passenger back to her cabin. He noticed how still the ocean looked through the hallway windows, whispering later, it was too calm, like the sea was holding its breath. On the bridge, First Officer William Murdoch peered into the black horizon. Visibility was poor, but no one was concerned. The Titanic was ahead of schedule. She was powerful, proud, untouchable. In the Marconi room, wireless operators Jack Phillips and Harold Bride were furiously sending messages, passengers, telegrams, business notes, casual greetings to friends in New York, a nearby ship. The Californian sent a warning about ice directly in Titanic's path. Phillips, overwhelmed with backlog, replied, "Shut up, I'm busy." That message, small, unnoticed, would echo through history like a ghost. Meanwhile, on the lower decks, crew members relaxed in their quarters. In third class, an Irish girl named Annie was singing to her baby brother, unaware that the tune would be the last he ever heard. In the smoking room, writer and survivor Jacques Futrelle played cards with friends, laughing as the night drifted on. Even Captain Edward Smith had retired to his cabin, trusting that his ship was too strong to fear nature. Passengers had no idea. They were sailing into one of the most deadly regions of the Atlantic, an area nicknamed Iceberg Alley. There were no binoculars in the crow's nest, and although the Titanic had received multiple ice warnings throughout the day, none were taken seriously. The atmosphere on board was almost magical, calm, luxurious, safe, but at exactly 11:39 p.m., just 9 minutes before disaster, lookout Frederick Fleet squinted into the blackness. He saw something, a shape, dark, massive. Still, he rang the warning bell 3 times and shouted into the phone, "Iceberg, right ahead." But by then, it was too late. What happened next changed lives, families, and history forever. Yet few truly know what it felt like to be on board, not when the ship sank, but when the world still felt perfect. Just moments before it shattered. It was 11:40 p.m. when the iceberg struck. There was no loud explosion, no violent jolt, just a low, deep grinding sound that echoed through the steel bones of the Titanic. Most passengers didn't even feel it. Those who did barely glanced up. A few heard a faint rumble beneath their feet, like distant thunder muffled by luxury. Some were startled by a strange vibration. But no one, not even the crew, understood what had just happened. In the crow's nest, Frederick Fleet had done his job. He rang the warning bell 3 times and phoned the bridge. "Iceberg, right ahead." First Officer Murdoch reacted instantly. He ordered the engines reversed and the ship to turn hard to port. But it was too late. The iceberg scraped along the starboard side of the Titanic, tearing open the hull beneath the waterline in a way no one could see. 5 compartments breached, one after another, like the ship was being ripped open by invisible claws. Below deck, Fireman Frederick Barrett felt water rush into Boiler Room 6 within seconds of impact. He'd been standing near the bulkhead when he saw a steel plate bend like paper and the Atlantic flood in like a black monster. He later said, "It was like the sea wanted in, like it was angry." On the upper decks, confusion bloomed slowly. A few curious passengers stepped out of their rooms, robes tied loosely, slippers on their feet. "What was that noise?" they whispered. Some laughed. Some returned to bed. A steward reassured a group of second-class travelers. Just a minor collision, nothing to worry about. But down below, water was moving fast, faster than anyone could imagine. In the mailroom, sacks of letters destined for America floated in rising icy water. In third class, families began to panic as crew members shouted orders, unsure of what to do themselves. The ship wasn't tilting yet. There was no alarm. No call to abandon ship. Just a strange energy, like something had gone deeply wrong. And no one was saying it out loud. Captain Smith returned to the bridge, stunned. He ordered an inspection. Designer Thomas Andrews already knew. The ship was doomed. In less than 15 minutes, he had calculated it. The Titanic would sink. It was a simple truth hidden behind layers of luxury and denial. The unsinkable ship was sinking. And no one was ready, but the passengers still didn't know. The band kept playing. Stewards served drinks. People laughed at the idea of lifeboats. Some refused to go topside, believing it was colder and more dangerous than staying inside. No one believed the ship would truly go down, not yet. Above them all, the stars still shined. The sea was still calm. The iceberg, now behind them, floated silently, a white phantom disappearing into the dark. And on board, 2,200 souls stood at the edge of history, unaware that the clock had already started ticking, and that nothing would ever be the same again. By midnight, the truth could no longer be hidden. Water was pouring into the Titanic faster than anyone had predicted. The ship's bow was slowly dipping into the freezing Atlantic, but up on deck, confusion still reigned. The crew moved quickly, but clumsily, many unsure of the emergency procedures. The word lifeboats was finally spoken aloud, but few understood how serious the situation had become. There was no loudspeaker, no sirens, just men in uniforms knocking on cabin doors, saying politely, "Please dress warmly and come to the boat deck." Many still believed it was a drill. Some refused to leave their rooms. One man famously joked, "We paid for a round trip. We're staying." But while the laughter still lingered for a few, elsewhere on the ship, final goodbyes were already being whispered. In the third-class section, families struggled to find their way. Many didn't speak English, and the narrow corridors were already flooding. Parents held their children tight, trying to find stairs, passageways, anyone to tell them what to do. One father, holding his baby girl, handed her to a steward and said with trembling lips, "Please, take her, just save her." His name never made the headlines, but his sacrifice lived on in silence. On the boat deck, first-class passenger Isidore Strauss, co-owner of Macy's, was offered a place on a lifeboat due to his age. He refused. When his wife, Ida, was invited to board, she turned to the officer and said, "We have lived together for many years. Where you go, I go." The couple sat down on deck chairs, hand in hand, waiting for the end. Further down the deck, the band kept playing. No one told them to. They chose to. Their soft, calming music drifted across the cold night air as chaos swirled around them. Some said the last song they played was "Nearer, My God, to Thee," though no one can say for certain. But the sound was there, music fading into the darkness. Young stewardess Violet Jessup guided women and children to safety, even as the deck tilted more with each minute. She had survived a previous ship accident, and she would survive this one too. But not before witnessing heartbreak after heartbreak, husbands kissing their wives goodbye, mothers weeping as they let go of their sons, believing they'd never see them again. Inside the grand staircase, a young couple stood in silence. He had refused a seat on a lifeboat. She had refused to leave without him. They embraced, not saying a word because no words were enough. By now, the lifeboats were being lowered, many half empty. People still didn't believe the ship would truly go down. But the cold wind of the tilted deck and the sound of water rising from below began to change their minds. It was no longer about class or wealth. It was about time. And for many aboard Titanic, time was running out. Every moment was now a memory in the making, a story waiting to be lost or remembered forever. By 2 a.m., the Titanic was dying. The front half of the ship had completely submerged. The stern lifted slowly into the night sky, exposing its massive propellers as passengers clung to anything they could. Screams now filled the once elegant decks, officers shouted, flares lit up the darkness, and the freezing Atlantic waited like a silent grave. The last lifeboats were already gone. Over 1,500 people were still on board. As the ship tilted higher, many jumped into the water. The temperature was near freezing, so cold it could kill within minutes. Survivors described the shock as something beyond pain, like knives stabbing through your chest with every breath. Yet people leaped, holding on to hope, desperate to escape the fate pulling the ship down. In the chaos, heroes emerged. Wireless. Operator Harold Bride, feet crushed, still helped send out SOS signals till the very last second. Thomas Andrews, the ship's designer, was seen urging people into lifeboats, refusing to save himself. Unknown crew members broke down locked gates, guiding third-class passengers through dark, flooding corridors, sacrificing their own lives for strangers. At 2:80 a.m., the Titanic's lights flickered for the last time. Then came a thunderous crack. The ship broke in half. The sound was so loud, survivors in lifeboats miles away would later say it sounded like the world was splitting apart. The bow plunged into the abyss. The stern, briefly righting itself, hovered almost vertical, then dropped. In less than 15 seconds, it disappeared beneath the waves, and then silence. But the nightmare wasn't over. In the icy black water, over 1,000 people floated, screaming, crying, calling out names into the night. Mothers calling for children, husbands shouting for wives. And slowly, one by one, the voices faded. Hypothermia claimed them in minutes, only. One lifeboat returned to help. Lifeboat 14, led by 5th Officer Harold Lowe, managed to rescue just a few. Many of the others, afraid of being swamped, stayed back, listening to the cries. Doing nothing. By 4 a.m., the RMS Carpathia arrived. The sea was calm again. Lifeboats floated like shadows. Survivors were pulled aboard wet, freezing, traumatized. Some silent, some sobbing. Many staring into nothing, knowing their lives had been forever changed. Among them were orphans, widows, and the few who had watched the world end from a wooden boat under the stars. Titanic wasn't just a ship. It was a world. A floating dream filled with hope, beauty, arrogance, and ultimately heartbreak. Its last hour wasn't just the story of a sinking. It was a mirror held up to humanity, our fears, our courage, our love, and our choices in the face of the unthinkable. And now, over a century later, the ocean still holds the wreck. And the secrets, if this story moved you, helped you see Titanic not just as a tragedy, but as a deeply human story, then please like this video, subscribe for more powerful true stories, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because some stories should never be forgotten.